Hello, everyone. Welcome to this CDAC hearing. Now, if you don't know what that means, let me just explain that first of all. This is something established, a project established by an organization called Voice for Justice. CDAC, I believe, stands for um, uh, Christians who have been discriminated against. Not sure what the acronym is, as it turns out, but go and look it up. It means you go and look at the website. But anyway, the hearings are for Christians who have been discriminated against in civil society in various ways. And I think we've had about 20 of these hearings so far. There's a number of us, a whole range of people who are involved with the project from a commissioner point of view, and people that sit on the panel, which is what we're doing today. And then we interview different people, and they tell us about their experience as Christians having been discriminated against. And so I'll tell you who we're going to interview today. It's a wonderful joy to interview Felix Ngole. And Felix will tell us all about his case in a short time. But before that, let me just introduce my other panel members. We've got Nina Power joining us today. We've got Ian Shelley, Robert Harris, and myself, Tony Ruczynski. And what we'll do in a moment, we'll hand over to Felix just to outline the area of his own discrimination and what took place with him. We'll then hand over to each of our panel members individually to ask Felix more detail about what's been going on, to clarify issues, etc. This is not a place where decisions are reached or conclusions are reached or anything else like that. We just air the facts as the individual witness has stated them, and we talk about those things, and we leave it there for the public to see and to recognize. So without further ado, in that case, I'll hand over to Felix, and I just want to make the point as we're talking to Felix, that of course, when we're doing these things, there are other organizations always involved in the background. I know Felix, that Christian Concern, have sponsored you to this point in terms of looking after you legally, and were it not for them, I think things would be very, very different. But Felix, it's good to talk to you, good to have you. Do you want to take a few minutes just to elaborate to us the background of what brings you here today?
Okay. So I'm going to compress. It's an 8-year story, if not nine. I'll try and compress it as much as possible. So my name is Felix Ngole. I wasn't born in this country. I was born in Cameroon. And before I came to the UK, um, I looked after my grandma at a very young age because she was blind. And the UK, Cameroon is not like the UK. You know, you look after your relatives who are either sick, you look after them. So she was blind. I looked after her until she passed on. So when I came to the UK as an asylum seeker, I decided to do care work um, just because that is what I did when I was in Cameroon, but also to keep my grandma's memory alive. I felt like I owed that to her. And I came to this beautiful town of Barnsley. People helped me, they looked after me. And I felt like, doing care is paying back. So I started working as a care worker. And then I moved on to do a course, access to nursing. That was in 2006. And after I completed the course, I went to uni, did my first degree, went back again, completed my second degree, then decided to do a teaching degree. So I went into teaching and I thought, no, I don't want to do this. I want to go back to
Mm.
care. Um, I applied to the University of Sheffield to do a social work degree. Um, and I was accepted. That was in 2014. I did my first year. It all went well. I was actually nominated as a course rep. First year went well. As I was about getting into my second year, I got involved in it was more like an online debate. Um, I'm not sure if you've heard about Kim Davis. She was a registrar in America. She was in prison briefly due to her Christian beliefs. And on the day that she was released, just by chance, I went on Facebook and there was this heated debate and they were calling her names and all sorts. And I was really intrigued why they would be calling her names. I think that's the first thing that shocked me. And I got involved in the debate. I didn't say much. I just said, well, why are you persecuting this woman? What she's saying is true. And then I quoted the Bible. Somebody asked me, but what does the Bible say about homosexuality? And I quoted the Bible. I didn't insult anyone. I didn't say anything derogatory, nothing whatsoever. I just stated, um, I just quoted a few biblical passages, and that was it for me. Um, a course mate saw the comments that I made online when I reported me to the university. And just one afternoon, I got an email from, I think it's the director of studies, inviting me to a disciplinary meeting, which really shocked me. Because at that point, he would not tell me why he was inviting me. He just said, you have to come in. And I said, well, I'm not coming in until you tell me why you're inviting me. So they then told me that, well, on this day, you took part in this debate, and this is what you said. So you have to come in. So went there, and I thought, if this has to be the end for me, studying my course, then so be it. I'm going to stand on what I believe in. I'm not going to change anything. So I went to the meeting, and I explained to them. I said, look, I didn't say anything derogatory. They asked for biblical passages, and that's what I provided to them. And I think they were expecting me at that point to apologize and then we move on, which I wasn't prepared to do because I didn't feel like I'd done anything wrong. So I said, well, I didn't write the Bible. I just quoted the Bible, and you hold your own beliefs. I hold my beliefs. So I think it's very, very unfair for you to portray my beliefs as oppressive or anything like that. Um, and I think to be fair, I was really angry because it was just towards Christmas. And I said, in a couple of days, you'll be celebrating Christmas. Do you know the meaning of Christmas? Christ came, he died for us. This is not about me discriminating against anybody. It's just me being a Christian and having a different view on human sexuality. So that was not good enough for them. They then referred me to a disciplinary panel. I went to the panel. It was actually chaired by a lesbian woman. I didn't know at the time. I only knew after the meeting. So went to that panel. It was, I think, a 3-hour hearing. And after that, they officially wrote me that they're expelling me from the course. So from there, we went to the High Court. Initially, I lost, and then we went to the Court of Appeal, and then I won. So the university had to invite me back to finish my course. I went back, and you would have thought that is it, Felix, move on. It should be easy for you now. But it wasn't because I needed a placement. Unlike every other student, I needed a work placement. So I applied for one, and sadly, Barnsley canceled because I live in Barnsley and I wanted to do my placement in Barnsley. They came back and said, oh, somebody recognized you. So we're not offering you a placement. And I was really shocked at that point because I thought I've been to the Court of Appeal and, I've been cleared, but that was not good enough. So, but I was very fortunate. There's a tutor, a supervisor at Sheffield City Council who contacted the university and said, we are happy to take Felix on. So I went to Sheffield City Council, I completed my placement, and I qualified. So after I qualified, I came across this job that was being advertised by Touchstone. And I felt, my goodness, this is the ideal job for me because that role, I was meant to work as a hospital discharge support worker. Now, I felt that if I work as a hospital discharge support worker for a couple of months, I can then move on to work as a hospital discharge social worker. So I applied for the job, went for the interview. I did really well, exceptionally well. I was offered the job. And a couple of weeks, if not months later, they wrote me to say, well, unfortunately, we're withdrawing the job offer. And at that point, they wouldn't even still tell me why they were withdrawing the job offer. So we had a back and forth where I said, look, you cannot just withdraw the job offer like that. Can you explain why you're withdrawing it? So they then responded and said, well, it's because we came across your case on online, and we don't think your values align with our values as an employer. So we had to go back to court again. And I think it was actually June this year, we had a ruling, which was partly in my favor, but we are still appealing the judgment. So we got permission to appeal. That was about 3 weeks ago. So the appeal has been granted. And in June next year, we'll be going to the Employment Appeals Tribunal.
Great. So that's, I mean, it's astonishing, Felix. There are so many questions that spring to mind, I'm sure. But thank you very much for that. You seem a resilient type of chap. But those sorts of things, I mean, off the bat, I think would have stumped many people, and they would have given up a long time ago. So maybe we'll touch on some of that. But let's go round, and if it's okay, we'll go round in the order of who's on my monitor. That's Nina, you're up first in that case, if that's okay. Have you got any questions initially you'd like to ask Felix or to clarify anything at all?
Just a clarification on what Felix understands by the biblical teachings on same-sex acts, because clearly there's a difference between kind of action and identity. And this, I guess, in a commonly this might be summarized as hate the sin, not the sinner. I'm just wondering if in the posts that you put up or in your own thinking, um, if you could say a bit more about that question of behavior and identity, because I think that's that maybe at the heart of some of what's happening in the culture, in the understanding of what homosexuality is, or whether it really exists as an identity, or is it, question of behavior. So if you could just speak a little bit more about your beliefs there.
I think, as far as I know, reading the Bible from a very young age, I strongly believe that God created us male and female. It's as simple as that. And I see marriage as a union between a man and a woman. That is what I was taught when I was growing up. That's what I understand that the Bible teaches us. That's the word of God, as simple as that. Um, and I hold that belief, and it's something that will never change, no matter the culture. But I also respect the fact that, there are people who struggle. But I don't think the way to deal with that is just to accept that it is okay. I don't think that's the way that you have to deal with it. I am a very compassionate person. I have worked with people who, you know, have several identities. And it is so sad that I've worked with these people for 25 years, or even not 25 years, for over 20 years, never discriminated against anyone. I go and see people as people. It's as simple as that. I see people as people created by God. I don't have to agree with their lifestyle. I've never agreed with their lifestyle, but I support them and I care for them. And I remember when I went to court, I actually shared the story of the Good Samaritans, the Good Samaritan. You don't see people who are in need and you judge them. You just go there to support them as compassionately as possible. So when I went into that debate the first time, it was purely a response that I was giving in relation to is homosexuality a sin? Well, we didn't go into homosexual acts and all of that. It was plainly, is it a sin? And I quoted the Bible to say, well, this is what the Bible says. Now, you have people who identify as homosexuals, but they don't take part in homosexual activities. that is fine because they're not taking part in the activity. That is okay. I don't know if I've answered your question. I know it's a very complicated area, especially for me, but that is how I see the Bible explain what homosexuality is.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for answering that initial question. Thanks.
All right, thanks. And what if we can avoid kind of getting into a theological debate? Because a lot of people, even on the call, would say, well, actually, the temptation itself, the Bible would say it's a problem. And what we probably can't do here is settle the theology, but the facts. And I think what you brought out there, Felix, was that, and what the court showed was that you have never discriminated against anybody, and that you've always treated people equally and fairly, which, so Nina was very good to ask that question and bring that out. I think it makes an awful lot of sense. Thank you, Nina. Next on my screen is Ian. Have you got any initial questions or anything you want to raise or clarify with Felix?
Yes, thanks, Felix.
Hello.
Looking at that statement by Catherine Hart, she she was from Touchstone, was she, the employer who
Yes.
withdrew the offer? I see in the statement here that Catherine Hart and a colleague suggested that the appropriate place to share your views was with family and friends only. So, I mean, from your ordeals through the courts, okay, you've won a legal judgment in your favour, but do you see that there's a limitation on the protection that the law is given to Christians? Because there seems to be perhaps a sort of court of opinion which is dominated by views which are incompatible with Christianity, which seems to sort of override or ignore or get round what the law is saying. Is that how you see it? That there's something else there apart from what the law actually says that is restricting your rights?
There's something more there. And I think if you attend one of these court cases, you'll see it is just all over. They always talk about restrictions. They talk about free speech, and they put everything together, which can be confusing at times. Those limitations do not apply to people from LGBT groups, for example. They can come and do whatever they want to do. They can talk about their boyfriend, their girlfriend, but immediately you talk about the Bible, you are in trouble. You know, they can wear lanyards and they can do all of that, but immediately you wear the cross or anything that portrays your faith, you are in trouble. So I think it's good to talk about limitation, but it only goes one way. That's how it always happens. In my experience, I've seen that quite a lot. It goes only one way. Catherine rightly said, as you read from the statement, that the only place you can discuss those views it is with your friends and family. But they discuss those views they discuss their views at work, and it's permitted. How fair can that be? Definitely, it's not fair. And it goes contrary to biblical teaching. The Bible says we should go into the world and preach the gospel. It didn't say we should preach only to our family. It says we should go into the world and preach the gospel. So I think it is a very, very unfair way of them looking at the issues, really.
The same person, Miss Hart from Touchstone, she said that you would. Well, I saw a report that you said that you would have to use the pronouns that patients or the service consumers wished. Is that the case? I saw that in the
Yes, she
Personnel
did.
magazine that you would have to use the pronouns that they wished, and she said that she's reported as saying that you would need that the promotion of homosexual rights would be a condition. Is that the case?
She did, yes.
Yeah. So those are rather, that sounds like an infringement of your freedom of conscience.
Definitely it is. to force anyone to use pronouns when you could easily use somebody's name. Why shouldn't I call somebody Paul or Peter or Rose rather than using pronouns? It's just not necessary at all. But it is another way to get people like myself. It's as simple as that. Yeah, that's exactly what she said on the day, that I'll have to use pronouns and stuff like that. It is very, very limiting, but it's more likely to affect people who hold traditional Christian views.
Mm. Did you, were you conscious of the ethos? I think she talked about your views being incompatible with the belief, the ethos and the values of the employer. Were you conscious particularly of any sort of political, social, religious views of the employer when you applied?
I think she talked about equality as well, treating everybody in a fair way. And to me, when I applied for the job, I thought I'll be treated fairly as a Christian as well. My views will be respected, unlike anybody else. So I've worked with people who, identify as trans and stuff like that. I've always worked with them and I care for them. So when I saw that job advert, I didn't feel my views are incompatible as such because I care for people. I love people. I want to work with people. I want to serve. I've got the experience. I just feel like I've got everything that qualifies me to do the job. But the only thing that they felt, the only reason why they felt I shouldn't do the job is mainly because of my views. I've never forced my views on people. I've never done it even once. I've never been accused for forcing my views on people. So I never saw it as a problem, mainly because I've worked with such employers before and I've never had even a single issue. I've never had anybody reporting me before.
Yes. Did having when the case when your offer was withdrawn, did you look at the website and see a lot of company policy on this issue? Was it very visible that they were promoting I think they had quite a high proportion of LGBT
Yes.
staff there, from what I read. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw all of that. And it wasn't a problem to me. I knew my role would be working at the hospital, supporting people, and not to go to work and discuss LGBTQ politics. My role was simple. Go to the hospital, you are a hospital discharge support worker, support people who come in with whatever issues they have. To me, that was straightforward, very simple. This whole issue of LGBTQ using pronouns and all of that came after they knew my views. That's when all of that came up. When I went to my interview, it was a straightforward interview, nothing about LGBTQ and all of that. We didn't have any of that. It didn't happen. But all of a sudden, immediately they came across my views. Everything changed. It was all about LGBTQ now, when that wasn't the case during my first interview. So, as far as I know, when I read the job advert, nothing really worried me at that point because I've worked with this group of people. And as I said, my role, as I thought at the time, would be just supporting people at the hospital. And I never felt that would be something that would be impossible for me to do.
Mm. I expect many organizations in the public sector or serving the public sector, particularly like this company, will have, if you look at the bottom of the website, something about diversity, equality, inclusion. Now, I wonder to what extent in your app you found that you can judge the organization's values from that, or whether that's sort of a catch-all required piece on the website, and certain activists will push their own interpretation and use that as an excuse for pushing a particular belief system, which possibly was done in this case. Do you think that the people you encountered were pushing their own particular personal view rather than the company's, or do you think it was in the end the whole touchstone value system, the whole belief system of the company?
You know, as a Black person, I remember fairly well when the Equality Act, when we had the Equality Act, I think that was 2010. And I felt like, oh my goodness, this would be such a wonderful thing. As a Black person, as a Christian, you know, when I work, my employer will be mindful of the fact that I'm a Black person. They'll be mindful of the fact that I'm a Christian. They'll be mindful of all of that. But actually, that is not the case. You know, when you hear equality, it is something else from what I knew in 2010. It has changed so much. So when I went to that meeting and they talk about equality, it is all about one thing. You having a different view as a Christian, a view that they don't agree with and they cannot tolerate. And on the other hand, what they see as LGBTQ rights. And equality goes out of the window immediately because all they focus on, and in my experience, it was all about LGBTQI. And I tried as much as possible to say, hold on, but you know, as a provider, I'll be working with a wide range of people. I understand most of your service users will be coming from, you know, this community, if you can refer to it as a community. But I'm going to work with a wide range of people. And if you are an equal opportunity employer, you have to embrace my views as well as a Christian. The fact that I think differently makes your company look better. You have to embrace my views as well, tolerate my views as well. But that wasn't the case. It definitely wasn't the case. So it was just a matter of pushing a different agenda, as you said. It was very clear. Even if you look at the document that you do have, it was just one agenda.
Great. Anything else, Ian? I think you're muted.
Sorry. No, that's all I have.
Back again.
Thank you.
Thank you. And excellent points there, Ian. I mean, you've raised a couple of very foundational issues. The idea of compelled speech, you know, wanting to force Felix to say words that he wouldn't normally say, which are unnecessarily so, as he said, because there are other words he could have used instead to do the same sort of thing. And then the idea of hierarchies and the Equality Act, which is quite bizarre. So all these things are there, but actually more important than Felix's skin color or his religion was somebody else's sexual identity. And that automatically people think that there are rankings in the protected characteristics, and they impose those. So very, very interesting issues. Thank you very much. Robert, thank you for being so patient. The floor is yours if you'd like to follow up with Felix on anything he said or inquire any further.
Thank you, Tony. Good morning, Felix.
Good morning.
Now, at the beginning, you mentioned that you come from Cameroon and that you came as an asylum seeker. I have a question that may be relevant to our discussion, and only, you know, I don't want to ask about the broader background of that, but the reasons for you coming here, did they have anything to do with potential problems of religious persecution that you faced? Did you face anything like that in Cameroon?
No, it was more political and not really. In Cameroon, funny enough, you can believe in whatever you want to believe in, and you're fine. As far as you don't challenge the authority, the government, you're fine. You can believe in any God that you want to believe in. Nobody will persecute you for that.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify that. Um, the culture of Western countries like the United Kingdom with human rights, tolerance or inclusion, freedom of speech, equality, I think it's safe to say that those values, the way they're practiced at least and understood, is going to be very different to what we might see in Cameroon. And I can't say I know very much about Cameroon, I must confess, but I'm going to make that safe assumption for the purposes of my question. So, given the problems and the challenges that you faced with the university and everything that happened since then, what personal impact has all of this had on you, especially given that you've come to a country that is widely known throughout the world as being a beacon of freedom of speech and tolerance? What's the personal impact on you and how you've understood all of this?
I wish I had enough time to explain to you the impact that it's had on me and on my family as well. I think time would, of course, fail me. Um, I I I have suffered. My family has suffered as well. I'll just give you a few examples. Um, whilst I was challenging the decision from the university to expel me from my course, I couldn't find work. And I would say even up till today, people, for some reason, they know my name. I apply for jobs and I never get an interview. So job-wise, it's been very, very difficult. I would say it's the same with my wife as well. Um, I remember there's a job that she applied for and she asked for a reference from her previous employer. Now, the new employer actually phoned my wife. She said, when I requested for a reference for you, um, I was basically told that, do you know who you're going to employ? Do you know that that is the wife of Felix Ngole? So good enough, the new employer actually offered her the job, but it was shocking to hear that the previous employer was trying to influence the current employer not to employ her. So yeah, we've suffered. You apply for jobs, you don't hear back, which wasn't the case before I went to the University of Sheffield. It wasn't the case before I took Touchstone to court. So you get that most of the time. And yeah, and psychologically as well, it impacts on you as a human being. I don't feel that I can go back into social work. I just feel like I don't stand a chance and I'll be targeted. If I apply for support work or care work and I feel like I'm being targeted, then what about social work? So I don't stand a chance at all. But it is something which I know I'll have to live by. I have to, I've got to the point where I know that's going to be my life, perhaps for the rest of my life. And yeah, that's something that I'm prepared for.
I see. Now, you made it clear that you did qualify as a social worker. Did you do the course continuously, or were there interruptions in the course given the fitness to practice hearing and the various other interruptions that happened? Was it continuous the 2 years?
No, it wasn't. I applied in 2014. I was kicked off the course in 2015. And then from 2015 to 2020, I had to go to court. Um, Between that time, I wasn't studying, of course, because I was kicked off my course. I started working as a living carer. That's the only job I could find, which took me away from home. And just around that time, we had our granddaughter as well. So I was working away from home. I remember coming back from work. She looked at me and she couldn't even recognize me. And that hit me really, really hard.
You're doing so well, Felix. You got this.
Please take your time, Felix.
I think people often say the process is the punishment, and this thing about just going through it is enough to put so many people off. And we think of you, Felix, and how brave you've been, and how hard the battle has been, and how many people haven't found any support and just have no job and no hope, and nobody knows about their suffering and their case. And how many people look and they say, "Well, there's no way I'm even going to say anything in that case because I don't even want to risk going through that." So, you've done so well, Felix. You know, and what you're doing is of such value to others who are in the same position but don't have the voice or the power or the courage that you have. So, well done. And this grandchild you're talking about will grow up learning the stories of their grandfather and the bravery of their grandfather and the stand of their grandfather. And although you may have missed a couple of months of their experience as a little one, they will love you as an adult because of what you've done. Rest assured in that. So, fantastic. Well done.
May I also add that my dad passed on last year, and he prayed for me. Whenever I would ring him, he'll pray for me. And when I rang him and I said, "Look, there's this other case coming up," um, I was offered a job, and then the job was withdrawn, and he wanted to know why. And I explained to him, and he was very, very shocked. He was very shocked. Now I went to court, and we had a court judgment, and the judgment came after he's passed on, and that was also very, very painful. But yeah, yeah.
And when you say the judgment, that's the Court of Appeal judgment
No,
the successful judgment. Is that what you're
no,
referring to?
the Court of Appeal judgment came out when he was still alive. Is the judgment from the Employment Tribunal.
Oh, I see. Yes. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the touchstone
the touchstone one.
one.
Yes.
Okay. Can I just go back a few steps? You said that they, to use your words, they kicked you off the course in 2015. Which month in 2015 was that? Do you
Oh,
remember?
I think it was, I think, 2 days before my birthday. So that was the birthday present for me.
Right.
Either it was on my birthday, actually. It was either 2 days or on my birthday. It was in March
March. Okay.
2015. Yes.
Okay. Um, while you was at university for that period, did you ever get involved with the university's Christian Student Society?
No. And the reason why I didn't, um, I can remember sharing with a few friends who I was close to, and the fear that I could see in them. They didn't just want to talk about my case. And in most cases, I remember one gentleman telling me, "Oh, I believe sex is sex." But he was saying that because there were other students around. Because after that, he came back to me and said, "Oh, I don't believe in all those things." So many of the students that I knew, they were really, really terrified even to talk about my case. So I didn't want to put them through that. I never got involved with them, the Christian Society in Sheffield.
I see. Okay. I'd like to look at the Court of Appeal ruling. The judges in that case considered a number of fine details regarding how, in their view, the university might have better handled the whole situation that you faced. And they cite the fact that somebody who supported you during that time and attended the fitness to practice meeting, Pastor
Yes.
Amuba, he suggested in that meeting at the fitness to practice meeting that perhaps there was a different way that you could be saying those things online. There could be, he spoke about the possibility of expressing your language diplomatically, and a few
Yes.
other things were said. Can you share your thoughts about how adopting what he called a middle ground, the language was middle ground, how could a middle ground have been applied in your case as you understand it? What would that have meant to you?
I'm really happy that you asked this question, Robert, because at the time, what they were saying was that, oh, it's the manner in which you expressed yourself. You know, they always went back to the manner, but at the same time, they were saying that there's no other way you could put it apart from approving that lifestyle. So there was no other way I could convince them that I could share in a way that is acceptable. But then the funny thing, Robert, is that with Touchstone, they didn't give me the opportunity either. They said, as far as you're going to attend training and you air those views, you're going to kill someone. Someone is going to die. So they didn't even ask me, oh, Felix, can you put it this way? Because I told them, I said, look, if a service user would come to me and say, oh, we've read about your story, I will try not to engage in that discussion because it will be less productive and less helpful to that service user. I will tell them that I'm here to support you and I want to support you as much as possible. I will not go into gender politics. So they weren't even happy with that. So when you say you're not going to say anything, they are not happy with it. When you say, look, I'm going to be professional the way I express myself, they're not happy with it either. So there's no middle ground whatsoever. If you say it professionally, and I remember when I went to the employment tribunal, the judge asked me, okay, you mentioned during the meeting that you're going to express your views professionally. What did you mean by that? And I explained, I said, look, there are people who I meet on a daily basis. If I know they're going to be, sometimes you know that this person is just going to be aggressive towards your views. And therefore, there's no need for me to share with them because it's not going to lead to anything. But there are people who are also receptive. So if somebody comes to me and I know that they genuinely want to know, I'll give them passages from the Bible for them to read. And if they have questions, I can respond to their questions from there. And it seems to me the judge was happy with that response. But at the same time, he still found out that no, the Touchstone was still right not to offer me the job. So there is no middle ground whatsoever. If you put it nicely, it is not nice to them because at the end of the day, you still disapprove of their lifestyle. So definitely there's no middle ground. But I've never gone out to insult people for whatever reason. I don't do it. I'm an evangelist. I go out to preach the gospel, and I see preaching the gospel as a way of winning people over. And in order to win people over, you want to be persuasive. You want to show them the love of God. You want to show them that there's a different way. And that's always my approach. And if I go there and I call them, it's not going to take me anywhere. That has always been my approach.
Can I just separate the Touchstone matter from what happened at the university? In terms of a middle ground, are you saying that if you had to rethink everything through again about the language you used on the Facebook posts, would you do everything the same again, or would you find, quote unquote, a middle ground in expressing yourself differently?
I think what I did on Facebook, if I can put in as much to answer your question directly, what I did on Facebook was to use biblical language, just as the Bible describes it. Now, I don't know if I can change that because I didn't write the Bible. You know, I just quote the Bible as it is. What I would do is say it as the Bible says it, but at the same time, my middle ground would be that God still loves you. He cares about you. I am not just condemning you. I am just telling you that I'm just sharing with you that there's another way. So that would be my middle ground. My middle ground would not be to change the Bible or to change scriptures. I cannot do that. I am not wiser than God. I've never ever seen myself as wiser than God, but I see myself as somebody who can share the Bible as it is, but at the same time show the love of God. The love of God is a middle ground for me.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to, again, still with the Court of Appeal judgment, I'd like to look at this idea about the university. One of their concerns was that when you posted those comments on Facebook, there was the possibility that a service user, i.e., somebody in receipt of the work of a social worker, might view those posts and take offence. And the broader risk, as they saw it, was that the profession of social work could be, well, the implication is that it could be brought into disrepute, and that the public's trust and confidence in that profession would be somehow damaged. That's the kind of fear they had, the concern. So that's the university's concerns. Now, I want to suggest to you a scenario, and I want your thoughts on this contrasting scenario. So imagine a student doing the same course that you did. Imagine this student was gay and posted negative comments on social media about Christianity. In fact, according to certain Christians reading them, let's suppose they can be read as being deeply offensive comments. And like the scenario that was presented to you by the university, the hypothetical service user happens to come across these offensive posts. And in this case, the service user happens to be a born-again Christian and is deeply upset by what he reads. Now, using the university's rationale that they applied to you, his trust and confidence in the profession is now damaged. He doesn't have trust in the profession now because he's read this. What are your thoughts about this? And did such a contrasting situation ever come up in discussions with the university?
I think we can have so many hypothetical situations, but when I discuss hypotheticals, I always go back to my personal lived experience. I've worked with people who identify as gay, lesbians, and I think from my experience, what they care about is that you're compassionate, you're kind, and you can support them, basically. So, and that is what I've always done. I am trying to see how I can answer this as best as I can. I think gay people know. Of course, I'm not gay, but I know that for many gay people I've worked with, they know that they are Christians who have different views. This assumption that gay people don't know that they are Christians who don't support their lifestyle is just not true. They know that there are many Christians out there who don't support their lifestyle, but who are passionate, who are caring, and who can do the job. But I feel that, institutions like Touchstone, the University of Sheffield, they always present one narrative. And that narrative is always that, gay people are going to see your comments. It's going to be horrible to them. They're going to kill themselves. That's definitely not true. That's definitely not true. For many gay people, they know that there are many Christians out there who don't. There are actually gay people who do not actually believe that that lifestyle is good. I've met many of them. Yeah.
Yeah. I just have a few other questions. You said in your introduction, your summary, about the placement, I think it was in connection with Touchstone.
Yes.
And you said somebody recognized you, and then, of course, it was withdrawn. Can you just say a little bit more about, do you know who recognized you, how it was done? Was it online? Any further details about that?
All right. So normally I think it's the same with many of the other professional courses. So with social work, they will ask students to complete a placement profile, which you state your name, the where you would like to do your placement, and then you send it to the university, and then the university will send it out to local authorities. So I completed my placement profile, sent it to my placement teacher, and then it was sent to Sheffield, it was sent to Barnsley. I didn't hear anything back. And when I then contacted my placement teacher to say, what's happening, she's the one who told me that, oh, Felix, we got a reply from Barnsley Council. Somebody recognized you and they said they're not going to offer you the placement. And I think she regretted saying that later on because I think she thought, oh my goodness, I don't know what I've led myself in. But I tried to ask for more detail. They won't provide details.
I see. Okay. I have a question about the Fitness to Practice committee hearing, which happened in January 2016. I'm looking at the Court of Appeal judgment, and in paragraph 23, it states, surprisingly and regrettably, there is no contemporaneous note of the hearing available. The only record appears to be a formal minute, and it goes on to say, there was a brief description of the nature of the proceedings, the stage of procedure followed, and the outcome. It was a 50-minute meeting. What's your recollection of what happened at that meeting, Felix?
My recollection, sorry, I had two meetings. The first one, and then the fitness to practice meeting as well. Is it the fitness to practice meeting you're referring to?
It is January 2016, correct?
Yes. Yeah, my recollection of that meeting, I think when I got there, they asked me a few questions, but it was all directed to, if I can recall, LGBT issues mainly. To be honest, I cannot. I've just gone blank.
That's quite okay.
Yeah.
That's quite okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I've gone blank on that one. I can come back to it.
If you think of anything during our time now or after the meeting that you think we would like to know about, please do communicate that to us. Thank you very much. I have no further questions for the time being. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Felix. Thanks for bringing out the hypocrisy of the situation, Robert. You know, how if the shoe had been on the other foot, we wouldn't be hearing anything about that whatsoever. And in fact, regularly, I'm sure it is, people are ridiculed for having a fairy faith and believing in invisible things, etc., etc. Nobody cares. It seems to be okay when it comes in the other direction. Felix, Robert touched on the fact that you were denied a placement by somebody initially because they'd heard about you and didn't want you. And again, this seemed to be a local authority who are obliged to live in accordance with the Equality Act. And I'm wondering, in your discussions with Christian Concern, the wonderful Christian Concern who we've mentioned have supported you through this, and perhaps you might want to talk about that, but did you ever discuss actually following up and holding that local authority to account for refusing you a placement?
I discussed it briefly with Andrea, but to be honest, Dr. Tony, I'll be in court every day if I had to mention the way I've been treated. And I think at that point for me, what I thought was, let that go. All you have to focus at this point is get another placement and get this behind you. So yes, I discussed it with Andrea in passing, and I just decided I just have to move on. I would have been in court even, I would have been in court again even before I completed the degree.
Yeah, crazy stuff. And I think just to pick up some stuff that one or two other people have raised, the idea that it shouldn't, the sort of people that your clients are attracted to physically shouldn't really have any significance on the work you're doing with them. The social work, it shouldn't really come up. It's just like, do they vote for Labour or do they vote Conservative or do they? It shouldn't really matter to the work that you're doing for them, should it? So the idea that this becomes such a significant issue, it's like, well, because of what I know you have in your mind that disagrees with what I have in my mind, you can't carry on the physical actions that are required for your job. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. And I've done the same job for, as I said, for almost 20 years. Nobody's ever complained. Never, not even once. If anything, I've got so many awards here for treating people fairly and for helping them and supporting them. I've got students who I helped, and today they are police officers. Some of them are lawyers. If you speak to any of them, the fact is, Dr. Tony, it's been so long now. If there was any person out there who I didn't treat fairly from the LGBT community, they would have been, it would have come out by now. For the
Yeah.
past 8 years, my story has been out there. No single person has come forth to say, "Oh, Felix treated me this way." No, not a single person. And as I said during my employment tribunal case, what they are suggesting, if it would have been true, to be honest, many people in Barnsley could have died by now. Many people from the LGBT
Yep.
community could have died they'll be in the grave by now because of the way I treated them. Many people in Leeds, I've worked in Leeds, Barnsley, Rotherham, Doncaster, all these areas. All LGBT people in Barnsley could have died by now. But that is obviously definitely not true. And they'll look for the worst case scenario and they'll present it as this is what is going to happen. And you have to take it whether you like it or not. As a judge, you have to accept that whether you like it or not. There's actually a document which I could have sent to you. It only came in late. If you go through that document, you see what I mean. They had an expert who came to court. He didn't present anything apart from the fact that, oh, this is the experience that I have as an expert. We had an expert from America, a theologian, of course, who presented so many papers to court. Instead, he was criticized, and the expert from Touchstone, who didn't present anything, his view was taken. So you see that even the courts, they can be very, very biased, very, very biased. And it's not only in my case. If you read most of the cases that are brought to court by Christian Concern, it's exactly the same thing. I unfortunately, I don't really have that faith in the justice system, sadly. I don't have any faith in the justice system as far as this new equality is concerned. But yeah.
And then the idea that, as was mentioned before by one or two people, that you're assumed to be required to promote LGBT values and rights in your job, which is like, well, that's not really you're not required to promote, anyone else's political views, anyone else's religion. So why should you be required to promote somebody else's sexuality? That doesn't make any sense, does it?
It didn't make sense to me at the time, and it still doesn't make any sense. I go to work to support people, to help people. I don't go to work to promote an ideology. I've never done that, and that's not something that I'll ever do. And it's just it is a shame, really, to see people who are passionate, people who are caring, are being barred from entering into the care profession, mainly because they have a different view. It is just so sad.
And in terms of your current case, which you're appealing, just to clarify for people and make sure I understand this right. So it was a little bit of a complicated judgment. You won a bit of it. So this was where the people who'd offered you a job and then withdrew the job. The court, as I understand it, said, well, look, you shouldn't have withdrawn the job. So that was wrong. But then you were right, having got him back in and re-interviewed him, you were right to say, look, we don't want you because we don't think your values align with our values. And that's the bit you're appealing, because that essentially says anybody who believes the Bible cannot have a job if they're working with anybody who is offended by their belief in the Bible, which sounds pretty restrictive to me.
Yeah, they can, of course, work with Christians, and we've got no choice than to accept them. That is fair game. But on the other hand, as a Christian, there's no way you can work with them without discriminating against them. They've got no evidence. In my case, no evidence was presented But there is this idea that it is just not possible at all for you to be a traditional Christian and you still work with people from this community. So it's just a one-way street the way they look at it,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Felix, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around the virtual room again, if that's okay. See if there's anything anybody wants to follow up. So we'll do that. And as I did the same order before, Nina, if there's anything you want to cover.
No, I'm okay, thank you. But thanks for the comprehensive responses to all the previous questions, other respondents. Thank you.
Great, Nina. Ian, anything that's jogged your mind and made you think, well, actually, let's pick up on that? You're on mute, Tim.
Just picking up, Felix,
There
on
you go.
your last response to Tony's question. They is it really that, do you think that they that activists such as the one you've encountered perceive the attitude of Christians as being one of hatred, as to why they cannot work with you in their organization? Just following up on your last reply there, that they want to exclude you because your values do not coincide with theirs. And do you think it's a lack of understanding of Christianity as much as a disagreement with it, that they see Christians as people who hate certain groups, including LGBTQ, rather than just a disagreement of principle?
It is really difficult to tell, Ian, because I really wonder whether it is just a lack of understanding. I don't think that is the case. I strongly feel that these are people who so passionately believe that their lifestyle is right, and why should you think otherwise? And they have such passion and is very, very strong. But that also means that anybody who thinks differently, then you are a bigot, if I could put it that way, because I was called that basically. The expert from Touchstone, he used every single word that I've not come across, to be honest, to describe me, mainly because I just hold a different view.
Yes.
So I don't think it's just we can simply put it as a misunderstanding. They are as passionate as we are. We believe that we can work with them, treat them as human beings, love them, meet their needs. But on the other hand, they don't share that view. It's as simple as there is no way that you would treat somebody fairly if you hold such views. So that is where they stand, unfortunately. And it is really difficult to convince them. It is really, really hard.
Mm-hmm. And was there any recognition from them that your viewpoint might actually be welcome to some of their service receivers who shared your point of view? Did that perspective come up at all or not?
Not that's a brilliant question. It never came up. It was as simple as there is nobody within this organization that will find your views palatable. It was as simple as that. And I remember at one point, Catherine was asked, but how many service users have you spoken with about, and she said 4. So they've served hundreds of service users, and she's spoken to only 4. And she came up with this conclusion that there is no way as a Christian that, people are going to welcome your views. So she spoke to 4, and 4 is good enough.
Mm.
And again, going back to the question that I think Robert asked this at some point. I remember when I went for my second interview, I said, can I come with somebody to support me during the interview? And they said, no, you can't come with anyone. And I said, why? They said, no, we're going to provide a note taker. So don't worry, just come on your own. However, Catherine had to look for another colleague to support her during the same interview. So she needed support, but I didn't deserve any support because of my horrible views. Why should anybody come to support me during the meeting? And it is the hypocrisy. It's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Are you done, Ian? Okay, thank you very much. Robert, any follow-up points?
Yes, a few, please. But Felix, just to clarify, Pastor Amuba did eventually come to the meeting. He was eventually allowed to come. Is that correct?
Oh, the meeting I was referring to was the Touchstone one and
All
not the
right.
university.
Yeah.
So the university, with all fairness, they allowed me to come with someone. I remember the
Yes.
first meeting I had there, I came with a friend from my church. So they allowed me to come with someone. The second meeting I had with the university, Pastor Amoba came along as well. However, with Touchstone, they didn't want me to come with anyone. And I felt that the way they set it up was that it's going to be my word against their word. And obviously, if we go to court, a judge is going to take their word, not my word. There were three of them in the room, and I was the only person. So if three people say this is what happened, and I say no, this is what happened, of course the judge will take what they say. So it was set up that way. And it was set up in a way that there is no way they could have offered me that job. It was just impossible. Because at one point they were saying that if a service user were to ask me about what happened at the University of Sheffield, I should discuss what happened with the service user. But on the other hand, they were saying if I come to a meeting, I shouldn't discuss those views because a colleague is going to die. So it was set up in such a way that there is no answer that I could have given them that would have satisfied them.
Yes. Can I just have a few questions here further? I just want to clarify some chronology. So you initially got enrolled on the course in September 2014. They
Yes,
expelled you from the course, as you clarified earlier, March 2015. When did
yes.
you resume the course again, and when did you complete it? Can you just tell us that?
I'll have to, just one moment. Let me check on my phone because I've
Yes,
got
thank
my
you.
certificate on my phone.
Thank you.
So I completed the course September. Oh no, this is the wrong one. Sorry. September 2021. That's when I completed the course. So I resumed September 2020.
All right, thank you for that clarification. One other question. Given what you've experienced, all these events that have happened to you, Felix, as far as freedom of speech is concerned and tolerance, how far, my question is, how does the United Kingdom, in your understanding, compare with your home country, Cameroon, on those issues of freedom of speech and tolerance? What's the contrast between the two?
That's a brilliant question, and one which I really have to reflect before giving a good response. In Cameroon, it is so funny because as a Christian, I feel safe, I will feel safer in Cameroon, where on the contrary, there is hardly any freedom of speech because if you criticize your government, you just disappear. That's the end of you. You'll be killed, you know, and in a gruesome way. So in Cameroon, you can, you know, preach anywhere. You can talk about whatever issues you like. in relation to the Bible, and you will not have any issue whatsoever. Nobody will arrest you. You're free to do that. And coming to the UK, I thought, wow, the UK. In Cameroon, you look up to the UK. It's the beacon of democracy. You can criticize your prime minister and there will be no issues. And I thought, oh yeah, in the UK, as a Christian, these are my beliefs, and I should be free to share those beliefs without fear of being persecuted. But then I realized, oh my goodness, that's not the case. I cannot even discuss certain issues in class. When I say in class, the school environment is a place where you're supposed to learn and you look at different views. And you might not agree with those views, but it's a learning environment. And all of a sudden, no, I can't do that. I cannot even say that I'm a Christian without fear that these people are going to pursue me. So it is, yeah, it is not what I thought about the UK, not at all. It is so different from what I thought before I came into this country. I it is hard. It is hard to believe that this is the UK I've looked up to for so many years, and all of a sudden I'm being persecuted by the same country that I looked up to. And I remember there was an event in London not too long ago for Christy, a lady who is being represented by Christian Concern as well. And I went there and I met other Christians who are they're going through similar issues as the one that I experienced. And I was really shocked. And I came to realize that it's not just me. What is common between me and these people who are being persecuted as well? It's just the fact that we believe in the true definition of marriage. It's as simple as that. So, yeah, freedom of speech is a very complicated issue as far as I'm concerned, because on the one hand, if I were in Cameroon today, I wouldn't have had an issue. However, I'm in the UK where we believe, or many people believe, that there's freedom of speech. But as a Christian, you cannot express your Christian views without fear of being persecuted.
Thank you very much for your responses, Felix.
You're
Much
welcome.
appreciated.
Thanks, Robert. Yeah, fascinating. Who was it said you know who controls you by who you're allowed to criticize? Yep. And it's quite interesting, isn't it? That the difference between the two countries and what you can criticize in one and what you can't dare criticize in the other. For fear of, well, it's not death, but it's the kind of punishment you've been taking us through today, which is, life-changing, really, Felix. So that's something. And also, I think, Ian, we raised the issue of the person who refused to allow you any form of presence and refused to countenance that anything you were saying had any value at all, referred to you as the bigot, which is really ironic. And then I suppose finally my point would be, how do we change any of this, Felix? Have you got any thoughts on how things could be made better? Because yes, we're a liberal democracy. People should be able to live the lives they want to live. Everybody, insofar as they do not interfere with other people's lives. That's kind of what liberal democracy is. And it seems to me that unless people have ruined your life with impunity, and their legal costs, well, that just gets met, well, it gets met by you and me,
Yeah.
actually, because it gets
Yeah.
met by the taxpayer. So not only have you had to pay for your own legal costs, but actually you've had to pay for theirs as well. And they just walk away from this with impunity. They've still got wonderful jobs, super high salaries, super high pensions. Nobody cares. They can ruin your life. They can make up stuff. They can say all sorts of things. They can push their own ideology, their own propaganda, and nobody cares. Until we get to a point where they are also held personally accountable for getting you out of office in a manner which was incorrect and unfair, is this ever going to change?
I think it's going to get worse, unfortunately. I wish I could come today and say, oh, it's going to get better, but it's going to get worse. And the way that we challenge this is not to just pack our bags and go home, because that's what they want us to do. Basically, that's what they want us to do. They will intimidate you. And you have to think about your mortgage, you have to think about your job, you have to think about all those things, and you get intimidated and go home. But they know what they're doing. These people are fighting, and they're fighting really, really hard. And the only way we can overcome this is to be who we are. We are children of God. We believe in the Bible, and we'll die by it. And when we have to speak out, we speak out with love and compassion. That's the only way we're going to overcome this. But if we think that we're going to just stay silent, then we're passing it on to our children. We want our children to fight the battle that we could afford ourselves. So that is the only way I feel that we can overcome it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's a kind of a good way to wrap it up, I think. So this is Commission of Inquiry into discrimination against Christians. We have to remember that biblically, Jesus said his kingdom was not of this world. So, we can't expect anything other than a lot of hassle and a lot of trouble, because that's what was promised, right? But balanced with that, as you've said, is our obligation to offer yourself as a living sacrifice, to stand, and having done all, to remain standing. And Felix, you are a wonderful example of that. Thank you so much for all your effort. Thank you for your courage, your bravery. Thank you to your family too, because as you've made the points, it's not just you that has to go through this. It's much wider. So I think you've done, and you're doing a wonderful job. Hopefully, we can talk to you after your victory next June, and
Yes.
we'll see where it goes from there. But thank you, everyone, to the fellow panel members. Thank you there's one or two people dialing in, and for those of you who are watching too, please go to the website, look at the other ones. Thank you for all those organizations who have made these kind of defenses possible, and who really are standing up for free speech, not just for Christians, but for everyone who lives in the UK. I think that's it. We'll wrap it up there. Have a great day, everyone.